Hi guys, this is Pilleater again with another podcast. And I have on this time is Kashif Shahzada. Hello Kashif.
Hello, hi.
So I barely know you, but Claire got me in contact with you, and I thought I'd like to get to know you and what you do and what you blog about. So, if you could tell the audience what exactly you do and what you blog about, that would be nice.
Okay, well, I am a Muslim author and speaker based in Karachi, Pakistan, and my background is in interfaith work in England. I used to live in England previously, and I have worked for a number of interfaith, interreligious organizations as a Muslim, and I have had interactions predominantly with Christian churches while in the United Kingdom. And I write a column for Dawn newspaper, which is one of the largest English newspapers in Pakistan. And I also blog about faith issues, Islam, interreligious conversations, things like that.
Mm. So, how do you know, or how you are you friends with Claire Claw, and what is your relationships with the BNP?
Well, I don't have any relationship with the BNP or any other political organization. I'm strictly apolitical. And my previous interaction with Claire was with regards to her interest in the Islamic faith. She has spoken to me on a number of occasions, and the nature of those conversations is predominantly related to the Islamic faith, her interest in world faiths as such, with Judaism, with Christianity. So we have spoken at that end. I do not endorse her political views. And personally, I'm not a very political, reactive person myself.
That's interesting because what I usually talk about are people who are on the far right or far left end of the spectrum, and oftentimes you will have people who mix in esoteric religion with their political beliefs, such as Savitri Devi, who has this esoteric Hitlerism belief, which is very popular among the right wing circle. Now, from what I could recall, I only know really one prominent right wing figure by the name of Rene Guénon, who was also a Muslim, who converted to it. But I'm not so sure if you know the works of Guénon, if you're apolitical. But I think it's interesting for a fact that you would be interested in getting someone who is political to Islamic faith. Do you have other friends who are interested in politics and have an interest in Islam as well?
Yeah, I mean, there are many Muslims who are very much into politics, and from both right wing as well as left wing spectrum. And there are many such people. But personally, I mean, I have a policy of talking to people from all backgrounds. So when people wish to talk to me, if they are right wing or alt right or whatever background they are welcome to speak to me. But my expertise specifically relates to the Islamic faith and its relationship with Judaism and Christianity.
So, are you a consultant as your profession, or what exactly do you speak about? Do you just speak about Islamic faith and try to proselytize people onto Islam?
Uh, Yes, in a way. I mean, if people are interested in knowing about Islam, I wouldn't put it as proselytism as such. It's not a hard sell. Uh, my main profession is different. I have a small retail shop that I run in Karachi, and I have a background in business and marketing. So to earn money, I use that end. But all my work with regards to outreach, religious outreach, is to build bridges, to break down barriers of understanding, and to promote, mutual coexistence. And all this is done free. I don't charge people for that. So there is a lot of, I'm sure you know, there's a lot of misunderstanding, misconceptions about the Islamic faith in the world, especially in your part of the world. You know, there is people see Islam through the actions of terrorists and misguided individuals, and they probably think that the Islamic faith is all about that. But there are millions of Muslims in the world who live very peacefully with their neighbors and who would refute the actions of terrorists as such. So I think it's very important for my people like myself to talk to people at least and raise any issues that people may have.
Recently, there was what would be called the YouTube shooter, which was a lady who was Persian who had a series of YouTube videos, and supposedly she kind of went crazy and she shot about three people at the YouTube headquarters, and her videos made some rounds on US media, and it was almost like a joke in itself that she was making these very artsy, kind of strange. I'm not so sure if it was Islamic, quote unquote, in nature, but do you have much opinion on the recent YouTube shooter? Do you know about her?
I do recall reading bits and pieces in the press. We have the CNN and the BBC here. We get it in Pakistan. But I've not went into the content of her videos in detail. Uh, Whatever the case may be, what happened was tragic, and people should not resort to violence, to to such an extent. It is tragic, and I wouldn't advise people to turn to violence in any form whatsoever. They should be peaceful and law-abiding citizens, and they should express themselves within the domain of law, and not resort to violence.
Now, a lot, especially in the politics of Europe, there's been the talk of a crisis of an invading third world Islamization or Muslim control over Europe. Such works like John Raspinell's The Camp of Saints or Michel Houellebecq had a book called Submission, where he predicted, or at least said in a fiction narrative, that the liberal paradigm of the world would be submitted to Islamic faith if Western people do not are not open to this. Now, as a Muslim yourself, and you say that the religion is, of peace and, conformity, and you have to find the way to become Islamic or Muslim, it seems to me that there's a very intolerable group of people, or at least Westerners, that just want to say, Islam, it just wants to go on jihad and wants to pretty much rule over the West, as we can see by the past of Charles Martel, stopping the Muslim invasion of Europe. And there's been a significant history of West versus the Middle East. And so when you say that Islam is a religion to go, it almost sounds like to a normal English nationalist. I'm not. He's going to say, I'm not going to fall for that. Yet Claire, who's was in the BNP, that's very ironic to find that. How do you react to people who are just they're mostly come from that persuasion? Well, this seems to be a Muslim invasion, or that that the right seems this as because it's not like Islam naturally belongs in Europe.
Uh, you see, things are not really as black and white as they are portrayed in certain circles. Um, the thing with Europe is that there is a resurgence of the far right, and you have these right wing, political outfits who use the immigration card And obviously Muslims are more in numbers in terms of immigrants, so they get picked up. But I think the need is for people to mingle and mix and travel to Islamic lands. Muslims and non-Muslims have lived side by side peacefully for centuries. And it's not the case that each and every Muslim is looking at world domination or world supremacy. There are many non-Muslims who live in Islamic lands as minorities. For example, the United Arab Emirates. If you travel to Dubai, to Abu Dhabi, and to Oman, to Saudi Arabia, many Westerners live there, they work there, and they're perfectly happy to do so alongside their Muslim neighbors. So the world isn't really that black and white. There are good people in Europe, there are good people in the West, in the East. We can't generalize. We can't paint everybody with the same brush. Yes, there are extremists as well. There are extremists in all cultures. But as a whole, human beings are good. Human beings have inherent goodness within them as a whole. So, we need to see things specifically. And I wouldn't say there is influx of a Muslim intended takeover of Europe. That's I would take that with a bit of a pinch of salt. The problem with Europe is that European nations are not having a family structure, and because they don't have a family structure, they don't have that many children. They don't have large populations. Their populations have got a negative growth. So there aren't many people around to work. So obviously you need people to work, and for that you need immigrants. You need people to come over, and immigration, is not something negative. I'll give you an example of the Middle East again. For example, the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. Now, the local population of the UAE is, very minute. It's very tiny. The local Arabs. Most of the people who have made that country are immigrants. There's a lot of white immigrant population in the UAE. They're British people. There are people from the United States. There are people from South Asia. And all those immigrants have come to the UAE, and they have made that country. And they live peacefully. There are no riots. There's no problems. Immigration, you should see that, when there is immigration, there are people who come into a country. They also bring economic prosperity with them if they are, working and if they're contributing to the economy.
Now, in the American situation, especially in Philadelphia, the Muslim community is mostly black. We have the Nation of Islam, and they seem to be African Americans who have their own variant of Islam, but it's in favor of black nationalism. Previously, a year ago, I had on this guy, I can't recall his name, but he was a Hotep, and he came on my channel and he just wanted to talk about how the Hotep religion or the black mysticism was the way that most people should listen to, whether this is like the holy tablets by, I think his name is Dwight Eisenhower, but the point is it's black mysticism. And I don't know what your opinion is on the matter of the Nation of Islam, but if a Hotep is on, if I'm talking to a Hotep and he's trying to tell me all this esoteric information about black mysticism, and then you're telling me about, Islam and about its point or its place in Europe, then what is the compare or the contrast of that? Are there certainly different sects of Islam that you agree or disagree with, or would you be in favor of getting along with someone who is Hotep or has this black mysticism philosophy?
Yeah, the Nation of Islam is seen by the mainstream Muslims as a cult. They are not seen as, proper Muslims theologically. This is so because their founder has made some claims which run contrary to the teachings of the Quran. And while there is no denying that black people have had their rights denied, that they have been oppressed, their viewpoint that of their superiority of their sort of nation to others is not considered Islamic by many mainstream Islamic scholars and authorities. So, as far as the nation of Islam is concerned, the mainstream view regarding them within the Muslim community is that they are a cult. They don't represent mainstream Islamic voices. And that is why one of their main proponents was a man by the name of Malcolm X. I'm sure you have heard of him. Have you
Yes.
heard of Malcolm
Yes,
X? Yes.
yes.
He had left them. He had left them and he had joined mainstream Islam. The teachings of Islam is that all races are, they are equal, and no race has an, superiority over the other. So a black or white, Chinese or Asian or whatever you may be, your race has got nothing to do with your morality. Okay, you can be of any ethnicity and you can be good or bad. So this is the view of Islam, and the Islamic faith accommodates and welcomes all races and all people of all backgrounds. We aren't specifically a religion of a particular tribe, a particular racial group. So that is why we see any religious calls which prefer one race over the other to be deviant. We don't agree with them. And I'm sure you can ask Muslims living in the United States as well that what is their view of the nation of Islam. They will tell you that they are a cult. They aren't, mainstream Muslims.
Following up on that, I was going to also talk about the rare instances when whites are interested in Islam, and you do have that from some time. However, this requires getting a hold of an English translation of the Quran. And of course, you have to know the Quran's original language in order to understand it. However, I'm not so sure what you would stand on the point is that, especially in the West, where white Americans are, learning about non-Christian religions such as, Buddhism or Hinduism, and they might come across the, Quran and read it a different way as a mix, or they have this new age philosophy to it. How strict are you when it comes to Islam and when white Americans translate it into a different way?
Well, many white Americans have translated the Quran. It's not something new. Americans like T.B. Irving, there was a gentleman by the name of T.B. Irving. He has translated the Quran. The founding fathers of the U.S., they had the Quran. They used to refer to the Quran, and I believe there is still one of those rare Quranic manuscripts which was used by the founding fathers in the Library of Congress. And when Keith Ellison was sworn in as a U.S. congressman, he had that particular copy of the Quran brought to him, and he swore on it. So the Quran is not a document which is alien to the white Americans. And it is something we believe it is from God, and it is natural. It does not have, strange rituals and things like that. It gives a very simple, and straightforward message. There is one God who is the creator of all. God has no partners. God does not marry. God does not have children. And God has sent messengers, all the messengers which Christians and Jews are familiar with, like Abraham, Moses, Jesus. They are all Muslim messengers as well, Muslim prophets. They are mentioned in the Quran and they are spoken of very highly. And the main aim of the Quranic teaching is that we have to become good human beings. We have to improve ourselves and have a good character. And to do that, you have to observe God's laws, which are in the Quran. Quran gives laws, do's and don'ts of how you need to regulate your life. So it isn't sort of anything, magical or very mystical like that. It's something very practical. One can always take up a copy of the Quran and start to read it, in translation. Most translations, I believe, are accurate, and there shouldn't be a problem in doing that.
It's there. You've talked of the ideal of equality, which is very interesting, or the egalitarian mode of thinking. Now, of course, religions do have that philosophy, such as Christianity argues for some type of egalitarianism, and which has been very popular throughout the centuries. However, there is a pretty much an upcoming generation of millennials in America which are very defiant against their Gen X parents and baby boomer grandparents. In the American situation, there were of course hippies who also came into academia and created the New Left school of thinking, which argued for a quote unquote cultural Marxist takeover of America. And that as has happened, most white women today are feminists, and and there's a term called SJW, or social justice warrior, where the most normal people are basically on witch hunts against people who go against a very far left narrative of the world. It seems, however, politics doesn't match up with egalitarianism, but the left certainly takes pride that egalitarianism is a good. And most millennials today are young, resistant, they don't want to hear far left jargon of Derrida or Foucault. So what happens is they are finding the Dark Enlightenment or reactionary philosophy of the world, where egalitarianism is this kind of myth that makes people into it's more harmful. I'm not so sure what your opinion or philosophy on egalitarianism is, but most millennials are in favor of classical monarchy or religion, or some kind of illiberal thought that is not ideological. And there's been here this term red pill or something. Such arguments from the far right include ethno-nationalism, while the socialists or the left argue for in favor of a reformed liberalism. You might have heard the works of Jordan B. Peterson, but most American millennials are very resistant against the previous egalitarian thought.
Well, the Islamic position is that justice is a permanent value. You have to, if you believe in the Quran, if you believe in God, then you have to practice justice and not compromise on justice, even if it concerns your fellow countrymen. There's a verse in the Quran which says that be just, even if it concerns an enemy, even if the enemy is on the right and your own countryman is on the wrong, then you have to pass the verdict in the favor of the enemy. So justice is a value which we have to take hold of, and we should never be unjust towards anybody just because he is of a different color of skin of like us, he is of a different ethnicity, or he speaks a different language. The Quranic teaching is that all humankind is one. All human beings are one family, and the color of the skin is just a way to identify yourself. It's just a way to recognize each other. Just like, there are many different flowers in a garden. All the flowers look differently. They have a different, fragrance. So are human beings like this. Some are black, some are white, some are Chinese, and this is just to identify them. It's not a criteria to apportion resources or to act unjustly towards. So the Quranic position is very clear that justice has to be done. In all, and you cannot compromise on that. So this is the position.
Now, I also realize you have a YouTube channel. Have you been active on your YouTube channel, and what do you attend to talk on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, it's that channel is really work in progress. I don't have a very big budget. I'm thinking, the Ramadan, the month of fasting is coming up, and every year I do some programs. For this year, I need to get a camera crew and do things a bit professionally. It's a bit of a work in progress. So it would have more serious stuff. It would have, things about issues that are affecting us, our lives in general.
You said on your channel you're here to break bridges and build bridges and break down barriers to peaceful coexistence. And accordingly, would that peaceful coexistence be that people mostly convert to Islam? They can be other non-Islam, or that people practice a libertarian nature where everyone has their own communities without violence and everyone respects their fences and borders.
Yes, definitely. I believe that Islam is good, and I'm also sharing it with people. But if people do not wish to, accept it, and they have a different choice, then I respect that choice, and we can live peacefully with each other. You can live life according to your beliefs. I can live mine with my beliefs, and we can live peacefully. We can share this earth. We are all residents of one planet. Okay, and not only us, also other living beings, living creatures, and we have a responsibility. So we can all live peacefully with each other, and in order to do that, we have to practice some values. There are some rules of living to live by, and if you observe those rules, then why not? We can live, peacefully.
Mm. So, whatchamacallit, what is your thoughts on the Jewish question or Jews with the interests of Islam? Because from what I understand from your writings, there are some parts where you have written that quote unquote why Islam is against anti-Semitism. Do you, again, as you're talking about peace, are you in favor of working with Jews or converting Jews to Islam, or letting Jews have Israel and their own interests? What is the dynamic to someone who is anti-Semitic?
Now, when Islam has a relationship with Jews, because the Quran addresses the Jews, in numerous passages. We believe that Moses was a prophet of God. Jews also believe that. We believe that God is one and God is without any partner. The Jews also believes that. But there are some religious beliefs of the Jews which the Quran criticizes. For example, their belief of chosenness, that they are the chosen elite, to the detriment of the rest of mankind. Their belief that salvation is exclusively for them, and not for anybody else. The Quran says no, salvation is open to everyone. You don't have to be specifically of Jewish ancestry in order to be accepted before God. So we have disagreements at a theological level, but we do not have disagreements on account of race. You can be of Jewish, you can be of a Jewish descent. That is not something which the Quran is against. Okay, what the Quran is against is your belief and your behavior. That is what our point of difference is. With regards to Israel, now, no, we don't see the things in Israel which are happening, with the Palestinians and all that. That is wrong. That is unjust. That has to change. And clearly at that point, the Palestinians are the sufferers, and the Israelis are oppressing them. So, but I believe that you should open the room for dialogue and talk to people and come to a consensus, so that people are given their rights. There is no oppression, and there is mutual tolerance and respect for one another. So this is our position.
Um, we're coming to the end of the podcast, but for one final question, is there something else you'd like to say for people who just discovered your work, or any other issue you would like to expand upon in the future?
Uh, I would say, be objective in your study of Islam specifically, and don't allow your opinion or form an opinion on the basis of what third party sources or those who are skeptical of the faith they say. If you want to know the truth, you have to go on a personal quest. You have to start a personal journey, an objective journey, and have an honest appraisal of Islam. And to do that, the most important thing is for you to study the Quran. Islam is represented by its text, the Holy Scripture, the Quran. There are many Muslims who might do things, who might say things that go against the Quran. Those Muslims are not an authority for Islam, the Quran is. So we have to judge Islam by number one, studying the Quran, and number two, by being objective and not being biased in any way. So I invite everybody to have a look and feel free to send feedback, questions, even criticisms. So we can have a chat and we can have a dialogue in a friendly atmosphere.
Mm. So, Kashif, it's nice for you to be on. So you're active on what, Twitter and your website?
Yes, I'm on Twitter at Kashif Shahzada, and people can send me feedback on there. They're welcome.
All right. Well, Kashif, it's nice talking to you.
Same here. Nice talking to you. Have a nice day.
All right. Same to you.